Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to reality. I'm your host, Jarrett Hill. We are live, which is totally bizarre because the show has always been pre-recorded. So very excited to be live with you this week and every week going forward. I'm super excited about our guest this week. First up, she is in studio with me here in Los Angeles. She's been on our show a number of times. One of my very favorite people. Her name is Asha Daya. How's it going, Asha?
Good, thank you. Hello, everyone. So great to be here with you.
So glad to have you here. Asha is the founder of Girl Talk HQ. Tell people what that is.
So girltalkhq.com is a blog that I started about 4 years ago. It is the online destination for women to find articles about female empowerment, feminism, social justice, body image, the one-stop shop for female empowerment news media.
All right. And then also joining us, not in studio, from Vancouver, his name is Kendrick Sampson. How's it going, Kendrick? Kendrick, can you hear us? I think you might be muted. Kendrick is an actor. You may know him from a little show that really hasn't caught on yet called How to Get Away with Murder.
What is that?
Right. No, yeah, Kendrick is on How to Get Away with Murder. And also Kendrick has been a pretty prominent supporter of the Bernie Sanders campaign and the candidate, and has been traveling and doing a lot of work with the campaign. So we're trying to get him dialed back in. And a little bit later in the show, we're going to be talking to Sean. Oh, there you are. Hey, Kendrick, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. I know you're traveling, so we appreciate you joining us via Skype. A little bit later in the show, we'll have Sean King. We'll be talking about Colin Kaepernick and the crazy couple of weeks Colin Kaepernick has been having regarding the national anthem. So first things first, I'm really grateful for all of the love and support we've gotten in the last couple of days. My show on The Hollywood Reporter just started yesterday, and that was really, really fantastic. So thank you to everyone who watched or sent messages and all of those things. I really, really appreciate that. We'll be doing that weekly with The Hollywood Reporter and immediately following each of the presidential debates, and we'll be live there and looking for your comments and all that kind of stuff. So with that said, I guess it's time to get into hot topics. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Hot topics.
All right. So hot topics are a little bit heavy this go round. We had the Commander in Chief forum just yesterday with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Kendrick, Asha, I'm curious your first impressions on the candidates yesterday. What did you think, Asha?
Well, I'm going to say that this was a culmination of just the double standards that the mainstream media in general have been, I guess, placing upon. You see the different treatment between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Like Matt Lauer was constantly interrupting Hillary Clinton, and she had the most valid things to say. Everything that he asked Trump, he just didn't have
follow-up questions.
Yeah, didn't have the follow-up questions. He didn't have great answers. I mean, this is Trump in a nutshell. It's like, come on, hound this guy. Give him the same treatment that we've been giving Hillary Clinton for the last 30 years, and let's see whether he can withstand the fire. So it was an interesting test and a foretaste of what we're going to see in the debates, which I can't wait for.
Kendrick, you've been a pretty active and loud supporter of Bernie Sanders, and I know this has been an interesting period for you. I'm curious, what did you think last night watching the forum?
See, I was packing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I do my best. I'm not even gonna lie. I do my best to avoid anything about the Republican candidate. I'm not gonna vote for him, so I don't really need to know his views and how his views are changing. But it bombards me. There's no escaping it.
Of course,
that's the problem.
There is no escaping it. I have to know what he says, regardless if I want to or not. And this is a prime example. And like she said, it baffles me. I saw an AJ Plus thing about his rape case. Of the 13-year-old girl, and it really baffles me how it's like people are this AJ Plus video was being shared, and so many people were sharing it, and I looked at the date, and it was made July 12th, and I've known about it for months before that.
People have been talking about it for a while.
Yeah,
I'm baffled as to why it's not a bigger conversation, or many of his flaws are a bigger conversation, or why in debates. Or why in interviews people don't hit harder on those
Well,
topics. And like she said, I mean, it's a double standard, and it's since I even more than that, I think it has to do with money and ratings and
Absolutely.
wanting him back on shows, and which is kind of despicable, right?
Yeah, it is
It
gross.
boils down to like money.
I was saying last night on countdown to the to election night exclusively on THR, that what's really been difficult for me is the fact that like we always grade him on such a curve. Like if he speaks behind a podium with a teleprompter, all of a sudden he looks presidential. If he doesn't say something completely egregious and offensive, all of a sudden he is making a pivot. And it's like, and I asked last night, I was saying,
That's the standard of a pivot.
That's
Yeah.
the standard. Well, and I said to them last night, I was like, so are we going to grade candidate Trump on the same curve when he's president? Like, do we judge President Trump on that same curve? Like, if he hasn't pissed off a world leader this week, he had a successful week.
Right.
Like, if he hasn't, hit the button like for the nuclear codes, it's been a successful week. That's really what I want people to think about when they're thinking about these candidates. And last night we had a log cabin Republican on, which I was saying to you in the green room, like it's like a unicorn. Like I hear you guys exist, but I don't know where you are. And
You
he
should
was-
probably explain what log cabin
Log
Republicans
cabin,
are.
yes, log cabin Republicans are gay Republicans that are full fledged Republicans and like going all the way in for it. And I mean, I get it, sure. I mean,
And
I
they
don't
do
get
disagree with a lot of the, especially the LGBTQ platform that. the
Go
Republican-
figure.
Yes.
Yes,
Be a
indeed.
Democrat or something.
But yeah, so I mean, we had an interesting conversation last night, and he was saying, I have a difficult time with Donald Trump, and I'm not sure, but they're still deciding to vote for him. So, yeah, I mean, Kendrick, as a Bernie supporter, for the duration of the campaign, how has transitioning, into the general been for you?
Well, I kind of didn't really have to transition. I mean, we've got the Our Revolution thing going, and I think the focus of it was just to get people involved in general and get more progressives into office on school boards and local offices and national level. And I'm still kind of doing that. And pushing, my activism got me into the campaign, so I'm continuing that, with criminal justice reform and Black Lives Matter and immigration reform, the Dakota Access Pipeline, fighting the TPP, and those types of things. So those agendas are still on the table, anti-war agendas, and no regime change. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on.
Okay.
I did want to.
Oh, go ahead.
I did want to say because you cut out, but I was talking to a buddy about Trump, and he was saying it's not necessarily racist that he classified the people that Mexico is sending into the United States as criminals and rapists, and he said it's not exactly racist to say that. And I thought, in the same way you were saying, you judge him by if he hasn't, blown something up or done something egregious. This particular person was talking about political correctness and how it's destroying America and such. And I said, well, it's interesting that you say that, because even if you do make the argument, and it's a valid argument, that he is not racist based on that particular statement, insulting our neighbor,
That's okay.
it's probably not a good idea.
Well-
If you don't want to say it's racist, I'm just going to flat out say it's just stupid. And there is a part where, as a politician, especially the most powerful politician in the world, in the most powerful seat in the world, you don't want to say stupid things, and you do have to be politically correct. You do.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thank you for saying
I mean, I think we all recognize like what the dog whistle that is politically correct, the air quotes politically correct. And every time I hear that, I'm just like, why don't you just say what you want to say? Like, why don't you say that you want to be able to say things that you should not be saying? Why don't you say that you want to be able to offend people? And, backing away from political correctness, I feel like every time I hear it, I know what you're trying to say. Like,
Right.
It pisses me off, excuse my language, because it's
I'm
like,
so offended.
because it is, like you said, it is that dog whistle that for too long politically correct has been the term that many people or a certain demographic of people have been using to say, you need to let me be my dominant, white cisgendered self because we've always been the dominant category and now you're challenging me. I don't like that. And so I'm going to come up with these terms. I'm not going to completely say that I want to be racist, but I'm going to use these coded terms that will sound legitimate. That's what it sounds like to me.
No, absolutely. Another story that I thought was interesting, and I'm curious about your perspectives on these. There's a story in BuzzFeed that students walked out of a high school after a girl had to remove her Black Lives Matter t-shirt. And ultimately, the girl came to school. She had on a BLM shirt and was seemingly not, causing any issue. And they called her into the office. Long story short, they made her put on a white T-shirt that had nothing on it, and she was really upset about it. And other students took a lot of offense to that. And I'm curious about your perspective, Asha, Kendrick, as well. Do you think it's okay for high school students to make political statements?
I 110% do think a school is a great place to foster political discussions about the world, discussions about race and activism and social justice. I mean, that is a great place to foster these discussions where teachers can guide the discussion and guide conversations and provide resources. So to shut that down is, I find, very anti-American. And also there's it plays into a lot of bigger discussions about the way that schools are policing young women's bodies in dress codes and things like that. And I think that is just a small part of this whole discussion. But to this young girl, I say slay, because girl, wear that damn shirt.
Kendrick, what do you think? Kendrick?
He has no comment.
Kendrick is like, I don't want to say anything about that. Screw that. I'm not a parent, so I feel like I always kind of take my own opinion on this with like a bit of a grain, but like I feel like it's a difficult situation with kids in school, and like they said that it was a distraction, and like she was causing a distraction, but according to the piece, like there was no real distraction being made with her wearing this shirt, and having to take it off was made more of a distraction than her just wearing it. But then I think like, okay, well, what is the line that we want to draw for kids in school?
What is considered distraction?
What is considered a distraction, and what is just like where does the line of distraction end and the line of like First Amendment rights begin? Because ultimately, I feel like she should have been able to wear whatever she wanted to, as long as like it was nothing like offensive or wasn't like too sexual or something like that, where she's got things out. But like I had a really challenging time with this story because I felt like she should be able to wear it because she's making a statement, but she wasn't like doing anything to hurt someone. So I had a really hard time trying to figure out how I felt about it.
Go ahead,
Kendrick. No, go ahead. Kendrick's back.
Oh yeah, I cut out for a minute. I missed a little bit of it, but yeah, I find it interesting that the most powerful thing to me, going state to state with the Bernie campaign, was how many high school students were involved and how educated they were on specific subjects. How some undocumented students were going around and championing immigration reform, criminal justice reform, and I think that's so powerful. There were certain times I would just stare at them and think, I wasn't even thinking about this in high school,
I know. Yeah, absolutely.
They're like knocking on doors. Would I have been bold enough to wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt in school? And if I was disciplined for it, I know as a kid I would have been very vocal, to put it lightly.
Were any of us that woke in high school? Like, because I certainly was not. And I think social media and the internet has a lot to do with that. But like, I was just trying to figure out like what club organization I was going to be in, and
who
like
has a crush on me.
Exactly right.
It was no one.
My whole love life in high school was a whole different situation. We'll do a different show on that. But like, I don't even know that I would have been like as informed and all that as even like I have brothers who are 23 and 24, and they're just like all about it, and I'm like, where was I? Like,
yeah.
But Kendrick, were you this woke in high school?
No, I was doing a lot of like nonprofit stuff, but I also don't think that it was the same climate. I mean, we had racism, like racist things in our school. and I would speak up about, things that I experienced, but there was no like Black Lives Matter movement. And I think it's powerful. I think 2016 especially is going to be an unforgettable year, but these past couple years, how these movements have been building and building. A lot of people are saying this is our civil rights movement. And it's, a lot of things are being exposed, and in the same way Brexit happened,
Yeah.
we have a beacon of hope and love, and we also have a beacon of racism and hate, and it's awakening and emboldening a lot of people, and which is pushing these grassroots movements and these civil rights and social justice movements like the Dakota Access Pipeline and environmental justice and environmental racism, fighting environmental racism. I mean, those are like things that these kids today are thinking about, and it's so impressive because in so many areas we see the older activists and the older legends getting tired and saying we can't,
We need someone else to carry on the torch.
yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
and what's so exciting about it is it's actually happening.
I want to like pose not a question, but like a thought. But I feel like when we were in high school, I feel like we're all the same kind of age. Our activism, and there wasn't like a particular like Black Lives Matter movement, but it was through things like art and music. I mean, you watch Straight Outta Compton. I mean, that was activism. Like what they were doing through their music was activism. The stuff that Michael Jackson was singing about, I just happened to be listening to Michael Jackson the other day. I'm like, he was talking about political stuff. Like they don't really care about us. Like that's political, you know? And so now it's come because of social media. It's given us an even bigger voice, an amplified voice to be able to talk about these issues and start movements in a way that didn't exist before. So I think it's cool.
I was just talking with someone about how dating for millennials is so much different because I feel like we have so many more options than we ever had before. And like, because we have Facebook and we have every single app and every single website and all of these different things. And so it's a situation where we can see so many more options, but I think this also plays into that, right? Like when we're on Facebook and we're discussing these different issues that are happening at our schools or in our cities or in our streets or whatever, like these are places that your voice is now amplified in a way that it would not have been, if you were just sitting in your club organization at school or something like that. So I think that is probably a big part of why we are able to see like so many young people so active and so involved in all of these different things. Which brings me to our big discussion for tonight. I want to turn to Shaun King, who is joining us now. How's it going, Shaun?
Hey, good to talk to you, man.
Good to be here. Thank you for being here. Shaun, you may know from New York Daily News. He has been doing a ton of other things over the years. I've known Shaun, and I'm really, really glad that you're here. I wanted to talk to you because you have been a very vocal person in the discussion around Colin Kaepernick this past couple of weeks, and him deciding to sit down and take a knee for the national anthem. And you wrote a few different pieces at the New York Daily News that are shared on our Facebook page. If you guys want to find those articles, you can go to facebook.com/getbacktoreality with the number 2, Get Back to Reality, and see Shaun's articles. One of the articles that you did was saying that you'll never stand again for the Star Spangled Banner. And I read that piece and I was really moved by it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I really need to ask myself how I want to handle that situation the next time I'm faced with that. And I want to know what was the impetus to that for you?
Well, I think the powerful thing that Colin Kaepernick did is by him taking the stand that he took, it caused a lot of us to ask questions, like basic questions like, what is the Star Spangled Banner? Like his protest originally had nothing to do with the national anthem. It really was him saying, I want to stand for families affected by injustice and police brutality in America, and I'm going to use this time during the national anthem to demonstrate this protest. But when he did it, all of a sudden, a lot of this history of the Star Spangled Banner started coming out. And like my background, my major at Morehouse was African American Studies. I'm actually pursuing a graduate degree in history right now. And of course, I had an understanding that the Star Spangled Banner, like a lot of things that are important in American history, that it was written during the time of slavery, but I did not know that Francis Scott Key, who wrote it, not only was he a plantation owner, but he was a deeply bigoted man. And not that you could be anything other than a bigot and own a plantation, but he was a harsh human being. He fought against abolitionists. He was the district attorney of Washington, D.C., and regularly did everything that he could to make life difficult, not only for people who were enslaved in the area, but for free black folk in the area, for white abolitionists and others. He was a horrible human being. And there's a lot of history on that. And abolitionists back in the day, like, fully knew that he was a bad man. And when he wrote the Star Spangled Banner, little did most of us know that it was written almost 100 years before it actually became our national anthem, and it had this really horrible third stanza where the words "land of the free" and "home of the brave" were were written to rhyme with this lyric he has about putting slaves in their graves.
I have those words. It says, "No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave, and the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave."
If that doesn't make people have goosebumps, I don't know.
I mean,
Do they teach this stuff in schools? I'm from Australia, so I want to know from you guys. Do they teach this kind of history in schools, or are they just like?
I had
Hell
never,
no.
I'd never heard this before.
Yeah, no way. Like, that's the thing, and that's what it's so outrageous that when I first heard that, you almost think like, is that can't be true?
I
Yeah.
thought that.
Because yeah, like it seemed like like a popular myth, like something that Snopes or somebody was gonna debunk, and it's like, no, that's damn true.
Sean, I'll be honest with you. When I read it, if I did not know you and I didn't know that you were writing it, I would have gone and been like, "Yo, for real?" And like, but I was like, I trust Sean. Like,
Well, what got me, man, was the Smithsonian. Several weeks before Colin did this protest, the Smithsonian wrote a piece basically saying like, "Hey, should this really be our national anthem?"
Really?
And this was, but very few people like read the Smithsonian blog as a hobby, but it's out there, and the history, and several students, undergraduate students, produced a video earlier this year, not knowing that all of this was going to kind of come full circle, basically saying the same thing and showing this deeply ugly history. Now, here's what's complex about that, though, is all of American history, most of American history has really ugly roots when you start digging. And with this Star Spangled Banner, for me, I'm already frustrated with America's unwillingness to face its demons, to right its wrongs, just like Colin and others. But now, not only knowing that, but knowing the the original intent of the Star Spangled Banner, I'm just not going to stand up for it. Like, I'm a free man, and we can make our decisions nowadays, and it's just something I don't want to be a part of it. And I love being in this country. I love the freedoms that we have. Part of that freedom is saying, listen, that song, it wasn't written for us. It had bad intentions. I don't want any part of it.
Sean, I'm curious. This has really highlighted one of those things where we look at conservatism and its supposed attachment to patriotism. There's this whole idea that because you're a Republican or a conservative, that you are more about American than being a liberal.
You've cornered the market on values and patriotism if you're a
exactly,
Republican.
and you are inherently more for the troops and all that kind of stuff, because this kind of devolved into he hates the troops and he hates America and all of that. What do you think? What do you think that connection with conservatism and patriotism is? What is that about?
Well, see, ma'am, Michael Eric Dyson wrote this really powerful piece talking about It's called The Courage of Colin Kaepernick. But in this piece that he wrote, he talked about the difference between nationalism and patriotism. And he said the differences are huge. And he said, but people confuse the two. And he said nationalism is kind of blind loyalty to your country. And when status quo says something is so for your nation, you go along with it. And that's nationalism. He said patriotism is something altogether different. And you can be very much a protester. You can to me, doing what Colin Kaepernick is doing. A brother that plays for the Broncos tonight did something incredibly brave. He refused to stand for the Star Spangled Banner. It was the first official game of the regular season. It was, on national television. It was a home game, and he was there are 106 players between both teams, and he was the only guy who refused to stand. See, I look at that and I see that as patriotic.
Yeah.
I see that as somebody saying, I believe so much in my rights as an American that I'm going to exercise them in a way that's going to bring me derision and anger and hate. But I believe so much, at least in the written principles of this country, that I'm going to try to live out those principles. And here's the thing: patriotism or even love for the troops does not mean standing for the flag. Like America, more than any country in the world, has tens of thousands of homeless veterans. Several veterans a day. I think I've seen the number is almost up to 20 actually commit suicide in the United States. Like medical care for America's veterans is terrible.
So heartbreaking.
Yeah, but we're talking about patriotism means you stand for the flag. Like no, it should mean something much deeper than that. And for Colin and for me and for others, it does.
Well, Sean, I saw you tweeted earlier today something to that effect, saying like, if patriotism is standing for the national anthem, and that is that if that is the whole of your patriotism, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The thing that
Seriously.
has really infuriated me the most about this story is right in that space of like, do we forget that America is founded in and on protest? Like America,
Yeah.
the whole point of America is protest, right?
Right.
America is the place that is one of the unique things about us is that we can protest in this way. But Sean, one of your pieces in the New York Daily News was saying that you are asking white America why. What kind of protest is okay for them? And we've seen a lot of people tweet about these things, but they're like, so you're upset if we're marching, you're upset if we then decide to stand, you're upset if we then decide to sit down, you're upset if we decide to take a knee, you're upset if we wear a t-shirt, you're upset if we wear
Yeah.
a bracelet, you're upset if we just are silent. Like,
Yeah.
so the piece that he wrote that said white America, like, what form of protest do you prefer? I thought, and I hadn't even thought about it in that context before. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, man. When you take a step back and think about what Colin Kaepernick has done, it is actually like the most peaceful, benign, harmless protest someone could ever do. We're talking about a man silently taking a knee during a national anthem. Like when you divorce yourself from what if it's your obsession with what patriotism means, it's a very peaceful, harmless protest. But it has sparked a ridiculous amount of anger. And immediately I just started thinking like, well, what type of protest could he have done that you would not have been frustrated with? And as I started thinking through that question, I came back with nothing because
It's the
we've
truth.
seen, yeah, I mean, we've seen athletes who wore a t-shirt just during warm-ups and people were pissed. And it's like, what are we talking about here? Like the alternative is What if we block traffic? Well, that I understand that infuriates people, But what if we do a sit-in, or what if we do a march? What if we do a boycott? Basically anything that we do. And I think I just want people to understand it, that this isn't, people kept saying, several coaches and executives said, I understand what Colin Kaepernick is doing. I just disagree with his methods. And what I'm trying to say is, you're lying. Like that meme with the brother that, with the music in the back where, where he's saying you're lying, and it's like,
You lying.
like, like, no,
What's
you
so
don't
wrong with
have
the
beef with the
method?
methods. No,
Yeah,
but it's
right.
not the method,
Yeah.
because they hate every method.
Well, and I saw a tweet the other day that it really stung, if I'm being honest with you. It said something to the effect of, if you tell the police to stop killing black people and they threaten to stop working, you can't tell me that their job is not killing black people.
Exactly.
And I was like, yo, whoa. And then I was like, yo, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I that shook me, to be very honest with you. And I mean, we talk about this a lot, like stop killing black people, and Beyonce was in trouble for it. Like, I mean, a lot of people, everyone gets in trouble for mentioning it, but like the idea that we ask you to stop killing black people and your response is, we will leave our posts.
Like, that's such an awful thing to ask for. To
Like,
stop
it's
killing another human
outrageous
being.
to ask for. Like,
Right.
just that stung me. That stung me.
Yeah, it is. It's I found it so, like, I've written several pieces about how the majority of officers who've been killed in America this year were actually killed by white men. And but yet officers want to protest a
Well,
Beyonce concert or want to protest a 49ers game. And it's like, what are we talking about here?
where are our
That
priorities?
yeah, yeah, it doesn't match the reality. And here's what I'm trying to say is that um, it can be dangerous to be a police officer in America, and I have compassion for that. I know I've spoken with Colin Kaepernick. I know he has compassion for the hard work that thousands of officers do all over this country. But we have to be able to talk about holding the officers who commit some awful atrocities, holding them accountable without being blasted for hating police. One does not equal the other.
Why do you think we're so afraid to even have the conversation? Like this anger that we're seeing, especially from the right wing, and I don't know if it has a lot to do with the rise of the Tea Party, and that's just become mainstream in a lot of conservative circles. But it's like we don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to address the issue, the history of the fact that America was founded with on slavery, and it wasn't, that all this uncomfortable stuff is there. Like, it's never going to go away. Why are we so afraid to have that?
I think it's really more about the fact that police won't address them. Like, because I think there's
But
plenty
then
of
there's a
people having
ripple effect.
conversations about that. Like, I think plenty of people are like are having these discussions in forums like this one and sitting around kitchen tables. But I also think that it's a lot of the one of the major frustrations is that good police officers won't come out and say, like, yo, this is some bullshit. Like, this is not
Yeah.
okay. This
Right.
is, what I'm looking at in that video is very troubling. Or, because all the person ever has to say is immediately, I was afraid for my life. And every circumstance falls away. Everything that we're looking at in the video doesn't matter. Oh, well, the police officer was afraid for his life. So,
I mean, there's a lot of people, police officers that seem to be fearing for their lives. I'm like, maybe you should have picked another job.
well,
what
I mean, Bill Maher always says, like, you have a dangerous job. Like,
Yeah, you
being
knew
in
what
fear
you're
for your
getting
life is a part of the role, right? Like, if you're in the military, you're probably afraid for your life every day.
Right, but you don't get to be trigger happy and be like, oh,
Exactly.
well, that's my defense.
Exactly, Sean. I didn't want to step on you. You wanted to say something?
Oh, no. I'm in agreement with you all. I think there is this really horrible part of American culture right now that goes even beyond police brutality, where we're just not tackling the difficult problems of our time. If it's immigration reform, if it's hard decisions about our environment or infrastructure, if it's about economic inequality, like even in some places that just won't pass a basic living wage, where basically people have a poverty wage, where the only way for you to work for places, including Walmart or most fast food industries, is for you to be in poverty.
Yeah.
Even some places, studies are determining that you would have to work 120 or 140 hours a week just to really be able to make it in certain places. These are just basic problems, and our country refuses to address them with any kind of honesty.
I
Reproductive rights. I want to throw that in there too.
Go
That's a
ahead.
Sure,
very big
sure.
issue.
Well, Sean, you said you've spoken to Colin, and I know that in the piece that you wrote today, you were saying that you've been talking to a lot of different athletes, I believe specifically in the NFL. I'm curious what it was going to take to get, if more, players start taking a knee, or if they all start doing it together. Is that something that you think could be arranged or worked out, or is there even interest in that?
Well, man, yeah, I've talked to, just like in society, the younger the player, the more they are deeply troubled by injustice in America. Like, I guess I didn't expect to see that, but the younger players that I'm talking with, particularly the guys that are rookies or have only been in the league for 2 or 3 years, like they came of age during this time. Like, they came of age during Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Mike Brown, like that shaped them. Like they don't see that looking retrospectively. Like that's their story. But almost a huge percentage of those guys, they're about 1,700 players in the NFL. Most of them don't have guaranteed contracts. They could be cut at will and just be literally just be, left with nothing. Most of them have no alternative career path. This is what they're trying to do. So a lot of them, privately told me like, "Hey, I want to do this, but I am deeply concerned that I could be cut from my team or ostracized." And I get that.
Do you
Like it's very practical, and particularly these guys, these young guys, they're wanting some of the older, more veteran players, the NFL equivalent of LeBron James, of Dwayne Wade. They want those players, but in the NFL, to take that stand because they feel like, okay, that will protect us when we do it. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing here. And Sunday, I'm hopeful. This Sunday is when the full season opens up. I don't think we'll see hundreds of players, but I think we'll see a player or two, maybe more, on every other team or so decide to take a knee.
do
That's
you
See, I respect that, that viewpoint of, not having an established career yet necessarily, being dispensable. Because I kind of have the same
Sure, man.
viewpoint of as an actor. I'm like I've been, touring around with some established actors who have quite a bit more financial stability and
Sure. Yep.
career stability than me. But at the same time, and I hate using the word "but" because I don't want to negate that. I think that it's a respectable stance. At the same time, the only way I can have peace, if I see an injustice, is to take part in it. So maybe it's not, taking a knee, and being so brash, but I, if it's available to me, I don't know how to not anymore stand up, just
Yeah.
because in the grand scheme of things, my career is not the end. Although building that platform, I mean, it's a catch-22 because you have to build.
I think we lost Kendrick's feed. It cut out a little bit. We'll try and get him back. I can relate.
Yeah.
The last 2 months of my life have obviously been a little bit nuts with everything that's happened since Melania decided that Michelle was such a great orator, and but I've gotten a lot of tweets and messages from people that are like, "Well, you're a journalist and you're clearly showing your bias," and I'm like. I've never pretended like I was like I've my tweets have always been pretty
You're
damn
consistent.
progressive, exactly. And even my agent, we've had conversations about like different things that we want to do and that we're working on, and she was like, well, if you're saying this and that, I was like, look,
Why pretend?
I was like, if they go through this here Twitter feed, they're gonna see a lot. Like, I'm not gonna pretend. And so, but also, like, when I'm going into meetings for jobs with a network or with different sites and things like that, like, that is something that I'm concerned about a little bit. But at the same time, like, I'm a little too deep in the water at this point to turn around. So,
but I feel like you get, the fear is there and the fear is legitimate. But I feel like, in my experience anyway, I've gotten so much more respect than I ever thought I would. I thought I get a lot of, vitriol. I get a lot of from a lot of people that I don't know. It's exposed a lot of my people that I love's difference in opinion. But at the same time, the love that I've gotten has far, far, far outweighed what I thought, what backlash I thought I would get.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Kendrick, and I'm inspired by Kendrick and others who see. Here's what I think is important. I think where you hurt yourself, not you, Kendrick, but if you're on the fence and people think you're only like half-heartedly committed, I think you can then do some real detriment. But like, I think Kendrick and myself are examples of people like we go all the way.
Right.
Like I'm I'm all the way in. But here's the benefit of that is people look at me and they know like, oh, he really believes that. And when they look at like now after a year of activism from Kendrick, people look at him and say, "Oh, that's what he really believes. That he's not doing this for show or pomp and circumstance. This is." And so then even people who may be critical of us look at it and be like, "Hey, I respect that's that guy is an environmentalist, or that guy is principled against poverty, or whatever your issue is." And I think Colin Kaepernick has proven to us that if you take that risk and go all the way in, people will have your back. Now, it doesn't happen every time, but I mean, his jersey is now the number one selling jersey in America.
That's amazing.
Um, that's because people saw it and were inspired by it. And I hope that these other guys on the other team, I hope we can get behind them and support them in similar ways.
I want to say I was really inspired by Megan Rapinoe's. She plays
Oh
for
yeah.
the women's soccer team.
I wanted to bring that
I
up.
was really inspired by her because, I mean, she did it in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick, but also for her own personal reasons. She's like, you know what? I've grown up and lived in a country where I haven't been afforded the same equality and the same rights as someone else. As a member of the LGBT community, I haven't been able to get married to my partner until 2015, or depending on what state you live in. So I'm just like, yeah, you know what? There's probably it starts a ripple effect when one person has the guts to stand up. Yes, there's going to be all this backlash, but there are a lot of people who don't have the voice to say and the platform to say what Colin and Megan and many other people I hope are going to do. So
well, I've been fascinated by the way that that's happened. So I was actually really surprised by the way that the 49ers handled Colin Kaepernick and saying like, he has the right to do that, that is his choice and it is not a policy that he has to stand. But Megan Rapinoe's team did something different. They didn't respond that way. She plays for the Washington Spirit. And they decided to play the national anthem. Their statement was, "We decided to play." I'm quoting here. We decided to play the national anthem in our stadium ahead of the schedule, rather than subject our fans and friends to the disrespect we feel such an act would represent. That comes from the Washington Spirit, and I was taken aback by that statement from them. That what they basically did was they played the national anthem ahead of the players coming out on the field, so that she couldn't take the knee.
right.
And I believe she tweeted you, Sean, or Colin, or someone, and she said, back when she did it, it's the least I could do. Keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
And
it.
I talk with Megan, and she had been watching Colin. One, she's a world-class athlete.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we're talking about a woman who's won an Olympic gold medal. She was the World Cup winner. She's seen as one of the best soccer players in American history. I mean, she's a world-class athlete, and she is experiencing daily oppression in her own way. And when she saw kind of the hate that Colin Kaepernick was experiencing, it really bothered her personally. And she's never met him. I don't even think they've been in the same room together. But she just saw it, and she was just disturbed. And when she decided to take that knee, I thought it was a powerful moment, man,
Yeah.
because um, she then, even in her initial remarks, they were so thoughtful. Like her whole
Yeah.
thing was, I am here to get behind this cause. I'm not the leader of it. This is not about me. I identify with it, but I am here as an ally and as a friend. And it was incredibly courageous of her. And I'm deeply proud that she took that risk. And like there were some young women at a women's volleyball team in West Virginia who did the same thing yesterday. And that may seem small to us or to other people, but I mean it's a courageous act to do that in front of a crowd, in front of a team who may not really even respect your stand. And so um, we're in a peculiar time, and I think it warrants these types of demonstrations.
Well, we gotta wrap up. We're about out of time. For our regular listeners, we normally go a little bit longer. We normally go about an hour and a half. This week we're right at about 50 minutes, but starting next week we will be live starting at 7 o'clock Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern. I want to thank Sean and Kendrick. I know you guys are in different cities and different time zones and all that. right, different country. I really appreciate it. Before you guys go, Kendrick, tell people where they can find you on social media and what you're working on next.
Kendrick38 is my handle on most, and K-Smith38 is on Snapchat. And I am working on a bit of activism, and I'm in Canada shooting something
That you can't talk about.
I will talk about when I can.
Sean, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, good to talk with you. Good to talk with you, Kendrick. And I'm excited to be on and connecting with you all. People can find me, particularly on Twitter, or Facebook, or Instagram at Sean King, ShaunKing, and I kind of live online, man. So you can find me there anytime.
His little green dot on Facebook is on a lot. You can find him also on the New York Daily News, checking out all those pieces that he's been writing. Asha, I am so grateful for you to being here in studio. We will definitely be having you back. Tell people where they can find what you're doing.
You can find me at Asha Daya, ASHADAHYA. That's my Twitter handle. You can also check out my blog, girltalkhq.com. Full of all this awesome intersectional, feminist, social activism, justice, body image, gender equality stuff. Check it out.
You just threw so much in there at the end. I love it. And of course, my name is Jarrett Hill, and I thank you all for our new listeners, for all of our returning listeners. Really appreciate you hanging out with me and going through this last couple of months, which have been insane. Really grateful for all of the love and support that have really kind of stunned me. So thank you for that. You can find me at Jarrett Hill, no matter how Starbucks spells it. It is JarrettHill. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course you can find the show Back to Reality at Get Back to Reality on Twitter, getbacktoreality.com, both of those with the number 2, Get Back to Reality, all as one word. We thank you so much. Have a great day, have a great night, wherever you are. And if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours.
Get it all night long. You can let the groove get it all night long. Just let the groove get it all night long. You can let the groove